This morning when I was thinking about talking with you all this morning, this kept running through my mind like just us chickens. We'll just get together and have a chat. And then waiting for this, like waiting to do this is for me is like, when you watch the Olympics and there's, a snowboarder or a skier and they're up there and they're like, back and forth trying to stay, I don't know, warm, ready, whatever, but it's not quite the hour. It's not my favorite thing. I'm like, but anyway, so one thing what I do, I looked at email and then what appears but an email from another Zen teacher talking about chickens. And it just made me laugh, those rhymes all the time. Um, and yeah, I speaking of email, I woke up this morning and again, I looked at email. We have to look at email just to get on Zoom, sort of. I do. Um, and I've been going through this thing for just recently where you've probably heard of this, trying to get to inbox zero and trying to get to a place where I'm not overwhelmed by 8 million emails all the time and unsubscribing to things and things like that. But there's one thing I seem to have not unsubscribed from, and that was one of the let's give you a positive, uplifting message every day kind of thing. And so I got up this morning, and it just was the first thing there. It appeared and it said, doing those deeply unfashionable things, slowing down, letting your spare time expand, getting enough sleep, resting is a radical act now, but it is essential. And I thought, oh, I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to take like better care of myself, to notice what I need, what my body needs. You know, does that mean I should go to sleep? Should I? Giving a talk does not seem like a very restful thing, not for me. And and then it actually flipped itself really, and became, how can I be at rest? How can I be at ease giving a talk? And you know, so I think I want to sort of talk a little bit today. I have a few things I'd like to say, and I hope they come out in some way comprehensible, but they have to do with being at ease and not at ease and practice. Sometimes when we read things about Zen and listen to talks, it sounds like it should be so easy to be at ease. It's easy. It's in the name. So why don't we do it? Why don't we do it? Marion apparently in Open Temple recently read a Rumi poem. I said, it's so easy to be free. Why don't you just go do it? Have you ever thought that? So what's up? What's up? There's an Indian sage named called Nagarjuna who was around in the second century. Um, and there's I hope sometime to talk a lot more about him because I think he's very interesting and talks a lot about his perspective on the seamlessness, and sort of contingency and how things are connected and um, how we think that there's all this separateness and borders, but in some ways it's an illusion and it's a cause of suffering. But he has one thing he says that I noticed long ago and have always really liked. In seeing things to be or not to be, fools fail to see a world at ease. So there's that be or not to be, you know, the seamless, the ocean, the background, and then each thing, both being part of that and being something separate and being us, right? And so there's something there by being aware of that. It's one place of ease, right? That background, the seamlessness, it kind of knows, we've been talking about that. There's something that we're part of that knows how, knows what, that just keeps rolling along and doesn't need our help. And we keep thinking, I've got to get in there and help it. Gotta do something. And suffering arises. Um, I want to read you something. There's a brief story about teacher Nansen who lived long ago, as they did. Um, and this was something I saw a little talk about. Um, Nansen built with his own hands a retreat hut on Mount Nansen. Hence, he became Nansen. Which came first? One of his disciples was the governor of the province. And so the story is told that one day the governor went in and had doksan with Nansen. And sometime after that, Nansen said to the governor, "So, how are you going to govern your province when you get back? What are you going to do?" And the governor said, "I'm going to govern with wisdom and compassion." And Nansen said, "Oh no, all of the subjects will suffer. This is too bad. I'm sorry to hear that." And um, it's like so many things. It's like, to me, because I was giving a talk, it's like giving a talk. Oh, I'm going to give a useful talk, and I'm going to help all you people, and you are going to be enlightened, and I'm going to be competent, and all that stuff. And it's this huge separation, right? Some idea about what's happening instead of letting it just happen. And in that idea, something is at risk. What if, you don't become enlightened? What if it goes terribly? I have the idea that something's at risk, and then I'm not at ease. So if I'm not at ease, it's a clue. I'm in some way clinging to something. I think something's at risk, and I'm not just letting things be, you know? I'm not trusting, in a sense. And I had the thought just about before I went to give this talk about when you go into Doksan for meeting with a teacher, I think there's a big temptation to try to present what you think you should be, what you should realize. It's sort of true and maybe sometimes not, and sometimes it's not that way at all. But then there's a separation, you know, and all we have to really do is just say what's true right in that moment. It sounds so easy, and it's so not often. Sometimes it's easy when it's easy, but so in this thing about the governor going to rule his people with compassion and wisdom, then the teacher, the Zen teacher who was talking about this, was pointing out this separation that gets created there. You've already made a misstep when you had this idea that you're going to govern with wisdom, that you're going to, whatever, you're going to live your life the right way. You're not, you're not going to make any mistakes. So what this teaches is, you don't need to set about to govern with wisdom and compassion. If you just govern fully, put yourself wholly into the activity with nothing held back, without any notions about being wise or not wise. And he says, we all have this compassion and innate wisdom, this prajna wisdom that will emerge once we remove the obstacles to its functioning. Do you believe that? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? Once we remove the obstacles to its functioning, uh-huh, okay, there's the obstacle. Let's remove it. Okay, it's all easy. Why is it not that way? And so, um, it's just not. And one of the so I came across, I picked up a book, this you may have heard of by Stephen Batchelor called Living with the Devil. And that's another one I'd love to talk about more sometime. But his, the devil again is in it's a book sort of about including the obstacles as well as whatever else is here. But he said something that is in some ways really obvious, but I found it really moving and I wanted to share it. And he was talking about how um, often we think about hmm, practice, it's sort of like a thoughts, like we fall into delusion and it's our thoughts. And um, if we just could sort of fix those thoughts, it would be okay. But he was talking about how biological delusion is, in a sense, how biological it is to want to protect the separate self and forget about not being separate, you know? And he says, as an inherited survival strategy. So he said, this sort of as an inherited survival strategy, the brain creates the impression of being a fixed self in a relatively stable world that can be manipulated to achieve happiness, called control. By means of concepts and language, this seemingly constant self is able to learn from the past and plan for a future in which it will reap the rewards of what it does now. My future self will get enlightened because I'm sitting in meditation. Maybe that's not quite what we're doing. Um, Having guessed how others are likely to behave, it adopts maneuvers to outwit or exploit them. This innate sense of being a self, as well as the cravings involved in getting what it desires and avoiding what it fears, are built into the organism. We're born with it. It's part of the whole, right? And he also said, he talked about how the natural world itself supports these ideas. The natural world itself inclines towards stable and predictable patterns. The circling of planets around the sun, the recurrence of the seasons, the phases of the moon, the ebb and flow of oceans, the unfurling of a bud into flower, the organization of a colony of bees, the migration of birds, the beat of the heart, the division of a cell, the replication of a sequence of DNA. These are all things we can describe. We can kind of know I'm going to plant a seed and a plant's going to grow. And I can, you know, they're not wrong, but they're not the whole picture. And they lead us to think we're in control, you know, in a way we're not. And so all of the clinging and the trying to take care of this being and make it safe and liked, it's that's what we do. We're like group creatures, right? We like it. It is part of the survival of this. But what the Buddha and many others, realized is if that's all we see, we just go through these cycles of thinking we're going to solve our pain by dealing in this realm only and taking care of this being only. And inside of that is suffering, you know? Um, and I realized as I was just thinking about this, it's the Four Noble Truths, right? Life is suffering, said Buddha, the source of suffering, craving, thinking I need something, oh, thinking what I need isn't here, thinking I'm not enough, thinking I, need to be improved, thinking I need to be loved, thinking whatever, all of those things, source of suffering, you know. Um, these things. When I was thinking about what I wanted to say, and then I came down to like a couple, like, oh, the Four Noble Truths. I thought, well, they kind of know those things, but it helps, you just never know. Something comes in from left field and suddenly that's the thing. You're like, oh, that's right. That's what it's about. And that's a great thing. So so what do we do? There's a path, right? There's practice, there's a path. And that's the good news. And and so what's a path? Um, you know, practice. Um, Listening, paying attention to the words of the ancestors. When I thought, oh, what do I want to say? What do I have? The PZI Sutra book. The PZI Sutra book is enough. It's all in here, right? Um, and some things maybe you have to take on faith. If it doesn't, you don't feel it inside, you know, you have to take it on faith from your companions or from yourself from a different time. Remind you, oh yeah, you know, the path is real. It is possible to not suffer in the way that I make myself suffer over and over again, right? And and it's not those things I was describing about the natural world, they're sort of really fully in the world of logic. And that's the thing. I think it's hard to get out of the world of suffering purely by logic. And that's sort of where poems and art and koans come in. And it it took me a while to have as much respect for koans as I do now. But I'm here to tell you they're a cool thing. and and they can't be understood in the normal way, but just opening ourselves to them, you know just being open. And it's not just that, it's then in the whole realm of everything that appears, right? Everything that appears, if we include it, it's got something for us. And you start seeing those rhymes and those, oh, I needed that and there it is. um But I think I wanted to read the thing about the biological basis of suffering, as because to me it made me feel so much compassion for the human condition. Like, and so we have this idea sometimes we need to be perfect. You need to be somehow become this perfected person. And I've noticed it's really common when people meet spiritual teachers or they talk about them or they write about them. There's this whole thing. Oh, have they truly escaped? Have they truly escaped and become fully and completely enlightened, never to have a problem again? And that's just not, it's too interwoven. So the relationship to problems can change. Through an understanding of who you are, you know. But I found myself thinking, like, just don't try to be perfect. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. And, there's a few things that jumped in my head as I was thinking about this and wrote down, um, I liked what David said this morning. Having no control and having some influence are seamless. That's it. How can I have no control and have influence? Because you do. And that's it. And so you can walk the path and you have no control over why you care. You have no control over why did you notice the path? What is it inside of you? That's actually not in your control. But it feels like you can still, oh, it's there. I see it. It's knocking on my door. That's the light, right? That's the light that's always working inside of you, and so that Lin Ji thing, whatever confronts you, don't believe it. That's all the things that seem logical. Oh, you're really no good. Oh, you don't know how to do this, whatever it is. There's a light. There's a light. You just have to go, okay, I hear that, but there's a light. And what do I want to say about that? Not too much more. I think this awakening is not far away. That's the other thing. We make it far away by thinking it's not here. That's it. There's a verse to a koan. The koan is in the Mumonkan Zhaozhou's Wash Your Bowl. And the verse says, because it is so very clear, it takes so long to realize. If you just know that flame is fire, you'll find your rice has long been cooked. So, you know, somewhere in that is like, don't fake it. Whatever you have, it's not hard to know. But hmm, there's something I've read before because I like it so much, but I'm going to read it again. And it's this thing in the sutra book. In the sutra book, one of the things I do miss is how we used to have long sutras all the time and do lots of sutra readings, and to the point that we memorized them. And there's something just like you might memorize a koan, then it's with you, or a poem, and then it appears like a song or something like that and can talk to you and live inside of you. And that's a nice thing. So I'm just noting that. In the sutra book, in the refuge ceremony, John wrote an introduction to the refuge ceremony. He said, moment by moment, thought appears, the earth appears, we appear. When we test each bit of light against the heart, we find that we cannot reject any, for we are the only hands and eyes that eternity has. With our virtues, our failures, and our imperfections, this is the body we take refuge in. This is what we offer to the world. And then I noticed, by chance, he said more or less the same thing in his book, The Light Inside the Dark. He said it this way then. The light of eternity fits itself into the small physical moments that make up our lives. We have bodies. We are bodies. Hunger, thirst, longing, foolishness, work, failure, joy, honor, and disgrace. Through us, spirit is entangled in fragile matter, taking its shape and height and name. There is no other vehicle. So again, do not ask yourself to be perfect. You don't have any idea what that is or would be. Asking yourself to be perfect is like, I'm not perfect. I'm not enlightened. But what are you now? That's the place to look. That's the place to have faith. So John likes to ask, what is it like to be you? It's a real question. It's a dharma question. So I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to read you one poem that came up to me, and then I'm going to let you get back to sitting. So this poem is called Backyard Mercy by Rachel Peterson. A fruit fly fell in my fine crystal glass, half full of $5 wine. Annoyed, I almost flung the final sips behind a rose bush. But I remembered Bogota, where 4 men fished me face down from a tide pool of tequila, delivered my body unruined to soft hotel sheets, and left 2 white aspirin by the bed. Fly, maybe grace is everything that could fuck you, but doesn't. Like my middle finger, just long enough to scoop 6 wretched legs from the deadly red and set them stumbling towards dusk, the shadowed promise of coming light. Another unearned chance at life. The interconnectedness. We all have our unearned chance at life, and we're blessed to be here. So thank you all very much.